Generational conflicts are so common, they're cliche. So we're going to talk about them on today's episode. Hopefully we won't sound cliche, but churches they have a bad reputation for infighting among generations. Dad, you and I are two different generations separated by, Gen X is in between us, and poor Gen X. We talk a lot about millennials. We talk a lot about boomers. We don't talk a lot about Gen X, and it's really shameful.
If you'd been born 2 months earlier, you'd be Gen X. I mean, you're barely millennial.
I have a theory about this, and I think it's a good theory. I'm not a generational expert, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so let me share my opinions on this.
Oh boy!
So even technically, if I'd been born a couple months earlier, I would technically be Gen X. I'm technically millennial, but I'm the oldest. So I think the oldest child, if on the border, tends to get pulled into the generation of the younger siblings. And if you're the youngest sibling, and you're kind of on the line of a generation, you get pulled into the older generation because of the sibling effect. So I would play down with my brothers, and obviously the youngest play up to their older siblings. So I think that even if I had been born a couple months early, I'd still kind of relate more to the millennial generation because that's what my younger brothers were. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, this podcast is a boomer. I'm a mid-boomer. 1946 to 1964, the birth dates of the boomers. I'm born right in the middle at 1955. Before we get into this, just a couple of things. You sons got me a record player for Christmas and albums.
With records.
With
actual albums.
Yeah. I know. That has been so cool. I've been playing my LP. Do you know what that means, Sam?
Long play, right?
Long play. Yeah, it's the album. It's the big one. The short one is called 45. It's like that. One song on each side. But I've been playing my LP of The Circle. And so I've been listening. I should have known you bid me farewell. I love that song, Red Rubber Ball. So I've been listening to that.
Well, vinyl's back. Listen, a lot of the younger gen people, I don't really listen to vinyl. I get the whole argument for it, but I'm just not into it. But it's kind of a thing. So you are, Dad, you're a hipster.
I'm back. I am. And let me bring up one other thing.
Just want to get this mental image of Thom Rainer, who, by the way, buys shoes once every 20 years and has worn the same hoodie. You have the same hoodie that you wear all the time, and it's from my high school.
It is. It's good that it still fits.
Thom Rainer's a hipster. Like I don't see it.
Well, hey, I know we're going to get back to this thing why millennials need boomers more than ever in the church. But talking to Mike Stottlemyre, and that dude, church growth services.
They get it.
Stuart,
get it.
They are crossing generational lines. I mean, they're working with churches, with younger pastors, older pastors, and particularly with their Grow Generosity Academy, where they basically have built a do-it-yourself type of stewardship campaign. They're doing incredible. I don't know why I'm talking about that. I just know that he represents someone that is getting it across all churches right now too. We're going to get into this in a minute.
I think Grow Generosity Academy is a good way to build a generational bridge.
There you go.
So link in the show notes. Go check them out. Mike and his crew are great.
Since we talked about it, there's Alana taking copious notes to make sure she puts them in the show notes. All right, Sam, talk to us about this. Millennials need boomers. I want to hear this. I'll just sit back and listen.
Yeah, I mean, boomers are numerous, and they generally have a positive view of the church. So let's start right there. We could, say a lot of negative things about generations, but I'll just speak positively. And again, I'll throw Gen X in here. I just want you guys to know we haven't forgotten you. It's just there's just fewer of you, and I'm sorry about that. But I think you could say the same thing of Gen X for the most part. Let's look at the positive here, and a lot of boomers do have a generally positive view of the church.
Okay, and talk to us about the Emergency Preparedness Handbook by Smart Church Solutions, our sponsor for today.
Yeah, certainly don't want to leave out our sponsor. Thank you, Smart Church Solutions, for sponsoring this. I think Tim Cool, this is Tim Cool's company. Is he Gen X? He's Gen X, right?
I don't know if you're Gen X or younger boomer. I do not know.
Well, we'll just call him Gen X. We'll talk. Well, so the millennial and the boomer will talk about Tim and his company, who's a Gen
and
Xer. So
like Church Answers, his son is part of the company as well.
that's true.
Yes.
Don't want to leave off the sun because I know how that feels.
Yes, you do. Sam who?
All right, so yeah, they've got this emergency preparedness handbook. It's free, so hey, check out the links in the show notes. Go get it. Security is critically important to your church. You obviously want to prevent potential harm to individuals on your property, and these are things. And it's tough because you don't often think about it. You think I've got insurance for that, but you need to be proactive. And a lot of churches, most churches, are not proactive in this area. So, in addition to protecting against physical harm, security is also important for maintaining the integrity and reputation of your church. One bad news article because of one bad thing, or someone sues you for some reason, which sometimes you just can't help. Like, how do you prevent that? Well, there's a lot of things you can do, but one thing that you can do is go get this emergency preparedness handbook from Smart Church Solutions. And you can go to smartchurchsolutions.com/security to go get it. smartchurchsolutions.com/security. All right,
millennial, talk to this older boomer.
Well, there's a lot of things I could say. There's a whole lot of things that I could say. I will say this, though, and this is something that I have started at my church. Retiring boomers are prime candidates for serving part-time church positions. Now, let me tell you about Jim. Jim is the best hire I've ever made in a church.
I know Jim.
And I know that's a bit of hyperbole. I know, I'm putting a lot on Jim by saying that. But
you're never prone to hyperbole, so we'll take this as factual.
So Jim is he was a retired letter carrier, and he wanted to keep working. He's got a lot of energy. He's a good guy, loves the Word of God, and he's a teacher in our church, and was working at Publix, great grocery store. Us Floridians love Publix, and I thought, Jim, I know you love Publix and you're doing a good job there, but your post-retirement gig doesn't need to be Publix. It needs to be the church. So we brought him on in a part-time role at our church, and he has done a phenomenal job. And, he's a boomer. He doesn't necessarily want a full-time gig. He's happy, with the kind of the life that he has now. But, we brought him on. We expanded his role a little bit from his teaching role, what he was volunteering to do. And he has just rocked it out. So for those of you who are like my age, you're a millennial, and, staffing a church is hard. Be on the lookout for retiring boomers. You might find an incredible part-time church employee out of it.
What is he doing, Sam? What's some of the roles he's doing now?
Seniors. Well, he does a lot of things. So prayer, care, seniors. He's kind of a utility guy. And he'll teach for me. He's preaching for me when I'm gone. 1 week, one Sunday this summer. So his technical role, his main role is working with our seniors, but he does a lot of different things in the church. And that's what I mean. He's like the best hire I've ever made. I mean, Jim's one of those utility guys. I can be like, hey, Jim, go do this. And he just does it. And he does a good job. He's a hard worker. Man, don't miss that opportunity. There's a lot of retiring boomers that, I don't want to make assumptions about what you can or can't pay people, because you should really just pay people what they're worth. But you will probably find a lot of boomers that are like, yeah, just pay me this. They'll name their price. It'll be a great deal. And they're going to love doing what they do. And you get a great church employee out of it.
I like it. Let's do the math. The oldest boomer was born in 1946. So how old is he or she right now? So
like 70,
77?
77, yeah.
Yeah. So there are a lot of them available. I'm 67. I'm
a whole lot of them available. This has still got a whole lot of energy.
Yes. Yeah. I like it. So children's ministries. Let's talk about using boomers, us grandpas. Well, I'm an us grandpa, and though they are grandpas. Let's talk about using them as volunteers in children's ministry. Uh, Unique opportunity there.
Yeah, we have a lot of boomers and seniors as well, the generation above the boomers that serve in our children's ministry and love them. They do an incredible job. You need moms and dads involved in children's ministry, and I'm very proud of particularly the men in our church. The women do a good job too, but we've got a lot of good men, a lot of dads that serve in our children's ministry, particularly on Wednesday nights. Um, and our Wednesday night program just rocks it out. We have more kids on Wednesday night now than we do Sunday morning, which is just a testimony to the programming that we have. So, but you need grandpas and grandmas too. You need them involved, and boomers can play that role. And loving on kids, man, and helping disciple children, it's a major thing. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing about getting boomers involved in the children's ministry is, this idea of preferences, generational battles, and what each generation wants in the church. A lot of that goes away when people start serving together. A lot of times personal, a person who's older will serve with younger people, students and children and all that. And, they just love those students. They love those children. And so all of a sudden their preferences aren't so important anymore because they're discipling the next generation. And, you're going to get a lot of older people who can actually help with the children's ministry. They've kind of been there, done that. They've raised their kids.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also going to, help mitigate this problem of preferences. Maybe your church doesn't struggle with that, but I think most do. Just because you're helping serve the next generation.
So boomers also can provide a level of financial stability. Usually, let's see, the youngest boomer born in 1964. So you can do the math there. I can do the math. 46 plus 23, 59 years old, I believe, for the youngest boomer. Anyway, many of them are reaching stable earnings points. Some of them making more, some of them making less. Some of them may have good pensions. Some of them may have good 401ks, 403bs, retirement, but it's stable. And so when they're in the church, they're usually stable living where they are. They're more less likely to move, and they're stable in their giving. And quite frankly, boomers in churches, from my perspective, I don't have good data on it, but anecdotally, they tend to be very faithful in their giving, generally compared to other generations. So my thoughts there, your thoughts.
The boomers will be the last of the institutional givers. That doesn't mean that the younger generations won't give. It's just they'll give in different ways, and they'll give for different reasons. But what boomers do is they provide that solid baseline in your church. Don't neglect ministry to boomers. Now, obviously the goal isn't, hey, we'll minister to you and you pay your way. I don't want to sound like it's a quid pro quo, and because it's not what I'm really advocating for. But we're here as kind of facts people, researchers, saying like, here's the facts. Well, here's the facts. People in their late 50s and early 60s are at their peak income earning years. And therefore, if they are givers, which a lot of boomers are, they are the ones that are giving the most out of any generation. Now, that's to be expected. And in 20 years, that's going to be the millennials. But for now, it's the boomers. And we need to make sure that we keep that in mind when you're talking about the financial stability of the church. Boomers need to be engaged. And they need to be bought in to what's going on in the church. If you disregard all of the boomers in the church, just out of selfishness, then you're probably going to lose a lot of giving units in your church and the larger giving units. So again, I don't want to talk about catering to people or appeasing people so that they'll give. That's not what I'm advocating for. I'm just saying facts are facts. Boomers are likely in your church of any one group, those who are giving the most. Okay, it's good to know that they're the ones that are providing the financial stability in the church. In 20 years, it'll be the millennials. But for now, it's the boomers. Don't forget that.
We got into a conversation for some reason about Mike Stottlemyre and Church Growth Services. Mike would say this, and I would echo it. Talk to the boomers and talk to the builders about legacy giving. What are they going to be doing after their life or even during their life while they are able to do so? The colleges are going to ask them. The universities are going to ask them. Other nonprofits will ask them. Churches tend to shy away from that. No, go to these people and start talking to them about legacy giving, or at least do it to the church as a whole. Secondly, and I know I'm getting real technical here, but I got 3 letters for you. RMD, required minimal distribution. What does that mean? Well, even though they've upped the age a little bit, at some point, people who have 401ks or 403bs have to take out a certain amount of money. They have to. They're required to withdraw it and pay taxes on it. Many seniors, many builders don't need those funds now, and they can direct it to the church and not get taxed on it. If you're a pastor, talk about that. Or if you're someone in the church, can talk about it, because many people have never thought about that. Give those RMDs to the church. I know I got way off, Sam, but we're talking about boomers and financial stability.
We did that. We had a retired banker at our church who's trusted, deacon. Everyone loves him. And I think he's like right on the edge of being the oldest of the boomers. Might be actually the youngest of the seniors. Anyway, he's right on that line. Well-respected, well-known person in the church. And he said, would it be okay if I started talking to my generation about RMDs, which you just said, required minimum distributions, and legacy giving, which is what Church Go Services can help with, Mike Stoudemire. They can help you with these things. And I said, sure. And he went around and made sure that all of his friends knew these sorts of issues. Like, you do know you can give to the church and it helps your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And we receive these gifts now because somebody went and talked about it.
That's so smart. All right. Generational ministry. Probably the big reason why millennials and boomers, and we won't leave without talking about Gen X at least one more time, but why millennials and boomers and builders of the next generation, the senior generation, generational ministry is biblical, Sam. It is all throughout Scripture.
Yeah, I mean, show me a place in Scripture where God advocates for, the segregation of people in terms of, unity in the church. It's not there. It's just the opposite. And we're all supposed to be working together, every tongue, tribe, and nation, making disciples of all nations. Generational ministry is biblical. Now, how do you do this? It's one of the biggest questions I get is, how do you bridge the generation gap? Because the generation gap is as big as it's ever been. I mean, 100 years ago, the life expectancy of a person was 45, 50 years old. So you had 2, maybe 3 generations of the church at most. Mm-hmm. Now the life expectancy is so high, 80 years old, that you've got 5 generations in some churches. Certainly 4, a good mix of 4. So it's harder to bridge the generation gap now because people are just living longer. Now, I'm glad they're living longer, but it does mean more work on your part to bridge that gap. But it's worth it. It's worth it because of what we see in Scripture when it comes to, the wisdom that comes from the older generations, the ability for them to help disciple the next generation. This is a very biblical thing. So, yeah, we kind of started this podcast by saying, generational conflicts, they're cliche. And they really are. And there's any number of things that we could talk about that people have talked about ad nauseum. I wanted to take a little bit of time, particularly for this podcast, and just say, hey, there's a lot of positives with boomers. I think if you're a millennial, you really need them more now than ever for the reasons that we've been talking about. And I think it's time for us to, instead of a posture of, well, they just don't get it, let's have a posture of, coming from a millennial perspective, instead of the posture of they don't get it, let's have a posture of they've been there, done that. Perhaps they might have something to say about this.
Oh, okay. I like it. And by the way, if I'm counting correctly, Sam, in your church, you have Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, and seniors.
Yeah.
5.
And there's, you could even throw in Generation Alpha because Gen Z is
that's right.
Just now phasing out, and a Generation Alpha. But I mean, these are the babies, right? These are the newborns.
Okay, but you have a 6th generation right now coming into your church, and an established neighborhood church.
Yes, in all technicality, yes, 6 generations, 5.5. Because the youngest generation is just now being born. But yeah, you're right. It's quite a mix, and I'm blessed to pastor all these crazy people. It's It's a great thing.
Their
I
pastor
call my
matches
church
them.
a merry bunch of misfits. That's what I call my people, and I say that endearingly.
I get it. I get it. You have said this at the beginning, and so we'll close it with this. Don't forget Gen X. They get forgotten so much. One more
Poor
time.
Gen X. We should do a whole series on Gen X just to say we have not forgotten you.
Yes. And again, Sam, the simple reason is there are fewer of them. They were born during a time of national malaise where families stopped having as many children, where birth control became popularized, where abortion became increasingly common. And so all those factors gave us a time where there was low fertility, low birth rate. I shouldn't say low fertility rate, but low birth rate. And it happened for a concise period. And so the birth rate went down and the population growth went down for that generation. That's why they don't get quite the press and the recognition that they should. But we want to acknowledge Gen X. Absolutely.
I was almost among you.
Yes, you were very close. Hey, before we go, we want to thank Tyndale and the NLT Student Life Application Study Bible. Very popular Bible, obviously for students, in the popular Life Application Study Series. I mean, immensely popular. If you want to get to a study Bible that is the top of the top, look at the Life Application Series, particularly the Student Bible in the NLT. But now it's filament enabled, which basically means you download an app, you point that app at each page of the Bible, and you get so much information. 27,000 on-page and in-app notes, 350 maps, infographics, illustrations, and much more. So you now have. Listen to this combination. You have the Life Application Bible, the most popular study Bible. You have it as a student form, so you have it now for your students. You have it in the NLT, and you also have the ability to use the Filament app with it. Absolutely incredible. Hey, you want to learn more about it? Just use the acronym SLASB, Student Life Application Study Bible.com, or you can just look at it in our show notes.
I've got an idea.
Yeah.
I've got this. So everyone has graduates in their church, high school graduates.
Yeah.
This is your gift.
Oh, this would be an incredible gift.
Every one of your graduating seniors should get this. SLASB.
I love it. This would be one of the greatest study Bibles. It could be evangelistic. It could be discipling. Man, that is a great idea. So we're talking now. This is being released on February 28th. By the way, happy birthday 5 days ago, Sam. It's being released on February 28th. So tomorrow, from the release of this, is March. We're getting pretty close to May in graduation. So it's time to order those.
That's what I'm saying. It's time to get ahead of the curve and go get you graduation gifts. SLASB.com, the Student Life Application Study Bible with NLT Filament enabled. It's awesome.
It is. And I would close this segment with a song, and I'd sing talking about my generation, but I'm not, because I'm going to show.
That's actually a pretty decent. Of all the ones you sing, that one's okay. That's the Who.
Yes. By the way, have you ever heard of the Them?
No, I have not.
They sing Gloria, Gloria, Gloria. So you talked about the Who. I wanted to talk about the Them. Okay. Thank you for being a part of this. I'm going to sing no more. I'm not going to sing talking about my generation. We're just simply going to say thank you for being a part of Rainer on Leadership. If you're listening, give us a rating and review wherever your podcast app is, please, so that we can continue to get this message out. If you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, give us a like, subscribe, and just keep this going, because this is a ministry that is offered to you by Church Answers and by our sponsors. We're always glad to have you here, and we'll see you in the next episode.